Man, I've been laid off, I'm running out of money, I don't know what to do. What can I do to make some money? Hey, you know what I've heard? I've heard making websites is an easy way to make money. So we've all heard about the gold rush on the web, that if you put a website up, you will make money. I mean, all these little 18 and 19-year-olds are instant millionaires. They don't know anything. They're uneducated. They drop out of college, and all of a sudden they're making tons and tons and tons of money. This isn't really how it works, but a lot of people think that. Basically, the internet and creating websites is a great equalizer. Back in the old days, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you wanted to be a writer or if you wanted to produce videos, you would have to go to a company, such as a magazine or a newspaper. Even if you were very good, you were competing for very few slots, and so there were a lot of qualified people in the world that could not get jobs writing or doing videos or giving their opinions of things, simply because there were not enough slots for them. Well, now, with the internet, since anybody can put up a website, if you have a good idea, if you have quality thoughts and content, you can put that up and you can make money off of it. The thing I will warn you is that the internet, the websites, are real businesses. Way too many people think that somehow running a web business is easy. It's not. This website that you're looking at takes a lot of time to produce and create. Too many people think, oh, I'm going to spend an hour a day and then make thousands of dollars a month. That's not how it works. It can work that way, but realistically it doesn't. The reason, was it Mark Zuckerman or whatever at Facebook is making billions of dollars is because he has the #1 website in the world. If you have the #1 company of anything, you're gonna make a lot of money. This class is Introduction to Web Administration. So if you're thinking about creating a website, I know you're thinking about Dreamweaver, and I know you're thinking about Photoshop, and I know you're thinking about doing videos like this. Before you can start to create web pages and before you can start to create content, you need to understand how the internet works, how web servers work, and how browsers work. Once you have a solid foundation in how the technology functions, then you can start to design your website and produce something that's worthwhile. A lot of web designers try to skip this class. They don't want to know about web servers and they don't want to know about routers and browsers. But these are the things that will affect how your website functions. So you can make the prettiest website in the world, but if the underlying technology that makes it run isn't very good, well, then you're screwed. So this class is Introduction to Website Administration. Like I say, we're going to go over things like DNS. We're going to go over how IP addresses and domain names work. We're going to talk about HTML, scripting languages, databases, web browsers, and then finally go a little bit into web design. To understand how the internet works, we need to go over a few basic concepts. The first thing to realize is that the World Wide Web, the websites that you go to, and the internet are two separate things. The World Wide Web resides on the internet, but it's not the internet. The internet is much more than the World Wide Web, the web pages that we go to. The internet was created back in the 1960s as a way for the military to communicate in case of nuclear attack, in case entire cities were vaporized. So basically what happens is the internet uses routers to transmit data the shortest way possible. So let's say you have Los Angeles here, and you have New York here, and you're trying to get information from Los Angeles to New York. The old way, how this would happen, is Los Angeles and New York would be connected somewhere in the middle in a main exchange. The problem is that if a nuclear bomb landed on this main central point and wiped it out, Now Los Angeles and New York could no longer communicate to each other. It would be impossible for them to talk. So what the internet does is you put lots and lots of these things called routers all over the country. And all of these routers can talk to each other. Like this. So all these routers can communicate. So normally what will happen is when you try to send information from Los Angeles to New York, the information will go to the first router. The router will then figure out the shortest way to get to New York and then send it to the second router, to the third router, to the fourth router, to the fifth router, the sixth router, until you get to New York. Why this was good for the military in doing it this way is since there's so much interconnectivity in here, if even 20 nuclear bombs went off, so that gets blown up, blown up, blown up, blown up, blown up, all this is blown up. It's boom. It's all dead. Everybody here is dead. But communications can still happen because the routers up here still exist. So the internet allowed for communications without a single point of failure. So basically, as long as humanity still exists, you could still get communication somewhere. Now, that's the internet. The World Wide Web was created back in either 1992 or 1989, depending on what Wikipedia article you're reading. And what the World Wide Web is it's web pages, all the web pages that you go to that are interconnected. So when you go to www.cnn.com, that is part of the World Wide Web. When you click on a link on that page to another page to www.weather.com, that is part of the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is all of the web pages that reside on the internet. The internet is this entire mess. It's the entire global network of communications. The World Wide Web is simply the web pages that are on the internet. So you've got the web pages. Now in order to view a web page, you need something called a web browser. Again, back in 1992, back in the dark old days when I was going through puberty, different types of document reading software could not read documents created by other types of document reading software. What I mean by this is if you created a document in Microsoft Word, WordPerfect, which was a different type of proofreading or document program, could not open and read it. If you created something in Star Office, WordPerfect or Microsoft Word couldn't read it. Different pieces of software could not read documents created by other pieces of software. So the guy who created what was called HTML thought, hey, what if I could create a set of standards for how a document should be created, and then different people can create software to view the document. So they can put in all their little weird bells and whistles that make their program special, but different browsers, different pieces of software can read the same document. So that's what web browsers are. Web browsers are simply programs that can read documents that were edited in HTML. This was a good idea because basically everybody thought, well, we come up with one standard on how to create documents, and then everybody can go their own way on creating programs to read those documents. Under that thought process, they came up with something called the World Wide Web Consortium. You'll see it called W3C. W3C, World Wide Web Consortium. This group was supposed to come up with all the standards for HTML. So when HTML came out, it was under standards 1, and then it went to HTML2, HTML3, HTML4. It's now on HTML5. This is a set of standards on how documents are supposed to be created so that different web browsers can read them properly. Why web browsers became important and which web browser you use became important is because in the software industry, as smart as all these programmers are, their bosses are really tedious idiots. When the web browsers came out, the different web browsers wanted to attract market share. They wanted to gobble up as many customers to use their web browser versus the other. So you had, back in the 90s, you had Netscape basically and Internet Explorer. Well, what both these companies did is they started creating standards that were not compliant with the World Wide Web Consortium. So if you wanted to see blinking letters in Netscape, you had to code it differently than if you wanted to see blinking letters in Internet Explorer. If you wanted to see, I don't know, sounds in Netscape, you had to write it differently than if you wanted sounds on it for Internet Explorer. So although the World Wide Web Consortium and HTML tried to create documents that all web browsers could read easily, the people who created web browsers kind of came up with their own stuff. So that's what they were trying to do with HTML, and then what happened. So Netscape and Microsoft came up with their own standards, and it's all a little bit of a mess. The last thing to talk about is when we're dealing with the internet, there are a couple of different types of protocols that you will hear us talk about. Protocols are the way information is transmitted and what happens when the information is transmitted. So you will hear something called HTTP. Let's see. HTTP. You will hear that a lot. That is called Hypertext Transport Protocol. That is the protocol or the language that is used to present you with a web page. So when you go to www.cnn.com, your web browser uses this protocol to be able to view that web page. It's just a language, you don't really have to mess with it a lot. The next protocol that is used a lot on the internet is something called FTP. This is another one you'll hear a lot of. It's called File Transfer Protocol. File Transfer Protocol allows for you to transfer files relatively easily on the internet. So if you want to send somebody a picture, or if you want somebody to be able to download something from your web page, you would use FTP. HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, allows you to see the web page. FTP allows you to download things from the web page, or when you get into creating your web page, it allows you to upload things to your web server. The last protocol that you'll hear is SMTP. This is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. This is the protocol that allows email to go from place to place. So when you email somebody something, it uses SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and using that, it zigzags all the way around the internet and gets to New York or Los Angeles or wherever you want to go. So to recap, the internet and the World Wide Web are two different things. The World Wide Web resides on the internet. The internet is the overall structure and infrastructure that allows communication to happen globally. Web browsers are pieces of software that allow you to read HTML documents. All web browsers are supposed to treat HTML documents the same, but at the end of the day, they don't. The standards that created HTML and a lot of other things were created by the World Wide Web Consortium. And like I say, they try to come up with these standards. Everybody is supposed to abide by these standards, and it's the programming world, so nobody does it. And then finally, the protocols that are being used when you go to a website or do things on the internet generally are HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This allows you to see web pages. FTP, File Transfer Protocol. This allows you to download things or upload things to web pages. And SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. This allows emails to get sent. Now, the first technology that is used to allow you to navigate on the World Wide Web is something called DNS. DNS. This is Domain Name Services, or if you're dealing with a server, Domain Name Server. What the domain name server does is it turns what is called a fully qualified domain name, or a domain name, Now, the first piece of technology that we have to talk about that allows you to navigate and go around to places on the internet is called DNS, or Domain Name Services. What you need to understand is computers don't really understand things like CNN.com or weather.com or www.thefoodnetwork.com. Computers have no idea what those words mean. Computers only care about things called IP addresses. So the computer really communicates only with an IP address. An IP address may look like 208.45.66.9. That may not be a real IP address, but this gives you the idea. When you navigate on the internet, when you go to places, when you download things, when you email people, and you put, let's say you go to www.elithecomputerguy.com, the computer that you're sitting at doesn't really care about that name. What happens is when you put in that domain name, elithecomputerguy.com or weather.com or such, your computer goes to a domain name server and asks what is the IP address for that domain name. So you go to elithecomputerguy.com, your computer that you're sitting at goes and asks a DNS, a domain name server, what the IP address is for elithecomputerguy.com. The DNS server says it's 208.45.66.9. The computer says thank you, and then it uses that IP address to go to the website, wherever it's hosted. So this is how domain names work and what DNS is. Basically, DNS is what turns what's called human readable addresses, domain names, into something that computers understand, which is IP addresses. Now, once the computer knows what IP address to go to for a website, you should realize that every server that hosts websites can host multiple websites. So if you go to this IP address, the server that's at this IP address may host 1,000 different websites. So what happens is then, when this computer goes to this IP address, goes to the server that hosts all these thousands of websites, there's a configuration file on that server that then says where to go in the server for your particular for website. So basically what happens is you're sitting at your computer, you type in elithecomputerguy.com, that asks a DNS server what the IP address is. It then goes to that IP address. When it goes to that IP address, you go to a web server. That web server then says, oh, you're looking for elithecomputerguy.com. That's this file here. That file is the web page, and then that web page opens up on your screen. This, in a nutshell, is how DNS and domain name services work. So now you're sitting at your computer. You type in www.elithecomputerguy.com. Your computer asks the DNS server what the IP address is for elithecomputerguy.com, and then your computer then goes to the IP address. When it gets to the IP address, there's a special type of server there that presents you or your computer with the web page. Basically, you can't just put a web page anywhere and expect it to work. You need a special type of server to present the web page to people on the internet. This is called a web server. Generally, there are only two types of web servers that people use. There's something called IIS. This is called Internet Information Server, and this is created by Microsoft. So if you have a Windows server, you can use IIS, Internet Information Server. The other type of server that's actually far more popular than IIS is called Apache. Apache, like the Indian. The Apache web server. This is the web server that people generally like to use. It's the one that's used the most. IIS can only be used on Windows computers. So if you've got a Microsoft Windows computer, you can use IIS. Apache has been created for all computers. So if you have a Windows computer, a Windows XP machine, you can put Apache on it. If you have Windows 2008 server, you can put Apache on it. If you have an OS X Mac computer, you can put Apache on it. And of course, if you have Linux, you're definitely going to put Apache on it. So Apache is a web server that is out there for all operating systems. Windows, Mac, Unix, Linux, everything. Everybody loves Apache. Now, both of these web servers are free. With IIS, if you have any of the servers that Windows creates, again, Windows 2003 server, Windows 2008 server, Windows NT 4.0 server, any of those servers have IIS as a component to them, and you get it for free. Even Windows Vista and Windows XP have a version of IIS built into them. The thing is that they are limited to only 10 simultaneous connections. So if you use Internet Information Server, or I think it's called Personal Web Server or something like that, that's built into Windows XP or Windows Vista, you can only have 10 visitors at any one time. With Apache, again, it's completely and utterly free. You can use it on absolutely anything, and you can have it as many visitors as you want. If your hardware can handle it, you can have 1 million visitors at one time using Apache. So, when you decide to create your website, you have two options on where to put the website, where the website will be hosted. So you design your website, and then in order for people to get to it on the internet, you have to put all those files onto a server that's connected to the internet. Your options are, like with this website, I own the physical server that all of these files are on. So it's mine. If there's viruses, it's my problem. If I need more RAM, then I need to put it in. I own the server. It is my computer, just like I have a desktop computer that's my computer. So you can host your own website on your own computer. That's one possibility. If you're really new to this, I would not suggest doing that though, because that opens up a whole new can of worms, because now not only do you have to understand how web administration works, but you also have to understand virus protection and security and hardware and all kinds of other things. So you can either own and control the server that your website is on, or you can do what's called shared hosting. What shared hosting is what most people do, is you go to GoDaddy.com or oneandone.com and you buy their hosting plan. So for right now it's anywhere between $3 to $20 a month. They give you a space on one of their web hosting servers, and they'll say you can put up to 50 gigs of data into the space, and then you have so much transfer bandwidth. So they may say you get 2 terabytes of transfer. What that transfer bandwidth means is how much data you can either push up to the server or pull down from the server in any given month. So if you have a lot of videos, you'll be using a lot more bandwidth than somebody that just has plain text files. Nowadays, I think a lot of the services now give you free unlimited bandwidth, but if you see that, if they give you a number, they say you only get this much bandwidth in a month, that's how much data you can either put up to the server or down to the server. So when you decide to create your website, when you've created the website, you can either put it on your own server using Internet Information Server or Apache, or you can buy a shared hosting plan, again for $3 or $4 a month. When you buy the shared hosting plan, you're going to have 2 options. Listen to me. If you listen to anything in the rest of this class, listen to this part. When you buy shared hosting, you're going to have 2 options. You can either buy Windows shared hosting or Linux shared hosting. if you buy Windows shared hosting, it'll be on Internet Information Server, but you can't really tell that. The big thing is if you use Windows shared hosting, capitalization within files does not matter. If you use Linux shared hosting, capitalization does matter. What this means, and just follow me. If you don't get it the first time, rewind and then watch it again and rewind. When you use a Windows computer, when you use Windows shared hosting, if you have a file that's called, let's say, hello, HELLO.txt. So this is a file. Uppercase H, lowercase e, lowercase l, o.txt. Within Windows, Windows doesn't care if there's capitalization in the file name. So uppercase H, lowercase e, lowercase l, o is the same file as lowercase h, ello.txt, which is the same file as if you did, let's say, he uppercase l's.txt. Within Windows, Windows doesn't care. These are all the exact same file. In Linux, these are different files. So if you have hello.txt and it's all uppercase, that is a different file than you have if you have hello all lowercase, which is a different file as if you have some uppercase and some lowercase. So in Linux, Linux thinks that if the capitalization is different, that they are different files. In Windows, again, Windows thinks these are the exact same file. Linux thinks these are three different files. Why this is important is when we get into the class on HTML and you're coding in, let's say, hyperlinks, you're coding in links to other places in your website. Well, if the name of the file that you're supposed to go to, you've done the uppercase H, ELLL.txt. Well, if in that hyperlink you do lowercase h, el, it won't work. You'll click on it and it'll go page not found. So Linux is considered a superior and more stable and faster web hosting platform. So if you're confident you're not going to make a lot of mistakes with capitalization errors, you can go with Linux. If you're kind of sloppy, like I used to be, you probably don't want to go with Linux. You probably want to go with Windows, because like I say, is if you name a file, with different capitalizations, it will be considered different in Linux. In Windows, these files are the same thing. In Linux, these files are considered different things. Linux looks at capitalization differently than Windows. Okay, now that we've talked about DNS and we've talked about the web server, now we need to talk about HTML, the actual documents that are going to be provided by the web server and that you're going to read. So when you go to www.cnn.com, you are presented with an HTML document that your web browser then turns into something nice for you to look at. I'm going to go over a little bit of the encoding so that you understand how HTML works. This is not a full HTML class, so don't worry about it a lot. What you should realize is that HTML is a human-readable language. It is a non-compiled programming language. What this means is that when the HTML document is presented to the web browser, it is actually presented as a text file, a normal .txt file. You can open any HTML document in Notepad or WordPad and be able to read it, view it, and edit it. How this works is let's say this is the final page that we're looking at. This is the web page. So this is www.test.com. Give you a little address bar here. So you go to test.com, and when you get to test.com, basically all it says is in big letters, test. So you sit at your computer, you type in www.test.com. When you go to test.com, you see a page that says test. That's all it says. It will be very simple. Well, what happens is there is a text file that is being presented by this web server. So this file will be called index.html. Again, we'll get into this further in this track, but we'll just take it for now. So when you go to the web server, it automatically sends you to the file called index.html. This is a text file. This is a text file that you can open up in, like I say, Notepad. If you did open up the file in Notepad, what you would see is something that looks like this. You would open up, or you have these brackets that say HTML. This says that you are looking at an HTML document. You then have another set of brackets that says head, and then there's information in here, and then you have another set of brackets that closes something called head. Again, you don't have to follow this too complicated, but just get what I'm saying. What the head does is, let's say, up in the very top, in the little blue part in the browser bar, if you go to www.cnn.com, in the address bar it'll say www.cnn.com. But then above that it'll say cnn.com, the world's place for news. That is put into the head. You actually use something called a title tag and put that information there. So if I wanted test to be up here, I would put test in the head under the title tag. Don't worry about it. Next, you open up what's called the body tag. And this is where you put all the information that the person will actually see on the web page, when the web page opens. So if I want test to show up here, what I would do is I would put a tag called h1. Let's see. Do a line equals center, and then do test. Test, and then bracket out h1. This line of code here is what creates this test in the middle of the screen. If that's all we want, we then use something called a tag. They close the tag, and then we close out the entire page. Okay, you don't understand really what I just did. But what I want you to grasp is what I wrote here. I understand, which means once you learn a little bit, you'll understand. But this is an entire web page. This is how web pages are created or written, is using all of this information here. HTML tags, heads, bodies, H1. You can write all this out in a text document in a way that when somebody goes to the document in a web browser, it'll pop up in Internet Explorer or Firefox or whatever, and you'll see a web page. So that's what I want you to get out of this, is HTML documents are created in human readable format, which means if you understand what is being said, you can open up the document in a text reader. It's like Notepad or WordPad, and you can read what's going on. The web browser takes that human readable document and then turns it into something spiffy that they actually show on the web. So this is what HTML is. Like I say, we're gonna have classes on this, so you understand this better. But just come out with it where it's basically a text file that you can read, and that a web browser will turn into a web page. Now that we've talked about HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, which is a human-readable web programming language, The next thing we need to talk about is scripting languages. So when you create an HTML document or you use HTML, you create something called a static web page. So just like a Word document or a WordPerfect document or anything like that, you write what you want and you put that on the web, and then when people go to that, they always see the exact same thing. It's a static document. The document never changes. You post it on the web and that's what they see. Well, people want things that are a little flashier. People want things that are customizable. They want what are called dynamic documents or dynamic web pages. Dynamic web pages are web pages that change depending on whatever the web programmer decides they should change on. So a dynamic web page may allow you to log into it. And then when you log in, it'll say, "Hello, Bob." That saying "Hello, Bob" and that being able to allow you to log in is made possible through scripting languages. If you want to see what the time is, or you want to create shopping carts for people so people can buy things on your web store, you need to use a scripting language. These scripting languages you will hear about, there's PHP, there's ASP, there's something called CGI scripts or Perl scripts. Nowadays, if you go with shared hosting, almost all shared hosting supports all scripts. But if you decide you want this dynamic web page, so you want your web page to be able to do lots of things, you need to make sure that whatever scripting language you use, your web host actually supports. The company, the shared hosting, or your web server, if you own your web server, you have to install a piece of software that will be able to understand the scripting language that you're using. So with PHP, if I write scripts in PHP, the web server that my document is on has to have a PHP module installed on it. If I write a document in PHP and put it on a server that does not have a PHP module installed on it, the server won't be able to do anything with it. It won't know what it is. So all web servers, Apache or IIS or one of the other weird ones that are out there, all of them understand what to do with HTML. You put HTML onto Apache or IIS, it will automatically understand what to do and it will do it. And you don't have to do anything else. If you decide to use scripts, like I say, PHP, CGI, Perl, you have to make sure that the module is actually installed on the web hosting server that you're using. A big thing now is they've gone from PHP 4 to PHP 5. So a lot of the software that you're going to be running into, let's say if you decide to create a blog or a website like Everyman IT, this requires PHP 5 in order to run. If I was using a shared hosted plan, I would have to make sure that they provide PHP 5 support. Many of the shared hosting plans right now only support PHP 4. So if I have a blog, I try to put it onto that shared hosting plan and it only uses PHP 4, not PHP 5, the website won't work properly. So the scripts allow you to do the dynamic stuff, like when you go to Amazon.com or Pandora or any page that does anything other than sit there, that uses scripts. And just remember that if you decide to use scripts, or if you buy a web page that uses scripts, that whatever web hosting you're using has to be able to support those. Now once we get past HTML, and once we get past the scripting languages, PHP or ASP or all that, the next thing that makes a website work or makes modern websites operate is the database that stores the data for the website. So databases are very, very specialized pieces of software that simply contain data. They don't look fancy, they don't look cute. If you saw the highest end, most amazing database out there, you wouldn't know what to do with it. It looks like a little DOS prompt. what happens to make the databases useful for websites is that the scripting languages that we talked about can communicate with the databases and then pull information out of the database for the website to use. So again, if you decide to log into a website, or if you are allowed to log into a website, when you put your username and password in, the scripting language will take that username and password. It will connect to the database, and then it'll see if they match up. It'll say, okay, this is the username, is the password the same? So the databases contain, like I say, things like usernames and passwords. It contains inventory. So if you have a online business, I don't know, you're selling widgets, the database is what would contain all the information about the widget. So it would contain the widget name, how many you have on hand, how much you bought the widget for, how much you're selling the widget for, what the shipping cost. All of that kind of information is saved in the database. Now, you've probably heard about databases, and you've heard there are a number of types. There's MySQL, there's Microsoft SQL Server, there's Oracle, and then there's about 100 other different types of databases out there. If all you have heard is that there are a lot of types of databases out there, then don't worry about which one you should use. If you don't know the difference and you haven't been told to worry about it, the only database you should worry about is something called MySQL. MySQL is a very, very powerful database that is completely open source. It is completely free, and all the pre-packaged websites you may buy or pre-packaged types of web programs that you'll buy will almost always use MySQL. So if you're thinking, oh, I've heard Oracle is better than MySQL, maybe I should use an Oracle database. Well, unless you actually know anything about Oracle, or unless you've been told you have to use Oracle, don't worry about it. As far as you're concerned at this point, the only database to worry about is MySQL. This is the one that basically all websites use, and you'll be fine with. So the database, the big thing to come out of the database is all the database does is store data. It just stores things like inventory, it stores vendor lists, it stores client lists, phone numbers, that kind of stuff. There's nothing fancy going on there. In order to make a database do something that anybody cares about, you use a scripting language. Like with MySQL, you use a scripting language called PHP. PHP goes into the database, it grabs the information that you want, and then it presents it on the web page. Or it takes in information from people when people fill out a form on a web page and dumps it into the database. So the database simply contains information. So now we've talked about HTML, we've talked about scripting languages, and we've talked about databases. Now we need to go to how your web visitor will view your website. So they will view your website through what is called a web browser. Web browsers are Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, Apple Safari. These are web browsers, and these are how you view websites. The big thing that you've got to come away with is to understand that all HTML, all web documents are supposed to conform to the W3C standards, the World Wide Web Consortium. World Wide Web Consortium comes up with all these standards, and then these web browsers are supposed to stick by them. And of course, they don't. So when you start designing your web page, the thing that you cannot forget to do is you need to design your web page, and then you need to open it up in Internet Explorer, and then you need to open it up in Firefox, and then you need to open it up in Safari, and then you need to open it up in Chrome, and you need to see how it looks once it's opened up. Depending on what web page you go to, or depending on how you design your web page may look very different in Internet Explorer versus how it looks in Firefox. Or it may look very different in Chrome versus how it looks in Safari. It really, I mean, it's a huge thing. It can look a lot different depending on what web browser you open up the web page with. That's why you don't see it as much anymore, but even 5 or 6 years ago, you would see a lot of times there would be a little tag on a web page that would say, this website has been optimized for Internet Explorer, or this website has been optimized for Firefox. Basically what the web designer was saying is that they were a little lazy, and they said, we don't want to worry about all the web browsers out there. We are going to design this specifically for one type of web browser, and then it's your problem if it doesn't work on your web browser. So the main thing to remember with the web browsers, and when you start designing websites, is that every web browser is slightly different. So when you open up a web page in different web browsers, they may look very different. And so you have to decide, are you going to edit the page to make it look more similar, or are you going to just say this web page is optimized for one web browser and be done with it? So we've talked about the domain names, we've talked about the web servers, we've talked about HTML, scripting languages, the whole 9 yards. What we haven't talked about is actually designing your web page. How do you design a web page to put on the internet? You know about the servers where you're supposed to put the web page, but what do you use to design a web page to put on the internet? There are a lot of different pieces of software available that allow you to create web pages. Some of them are very inexpensive, and some of them are very expensive. You can create a web page using any text editor. So you can use create a web page in Notepad, or I don't know, whatever Linux uses for a text editor. You can hand write out all that coding that I showed you before and create a web page using that. Back when I started, back in 2000, that's how I created my web page. I would actually write out all those codes, the head and the title and this, that, and the other thing, and that's how I created my web page. Now, a lot of people don't want to mess with that, and that's understandable because that's a pain in the butt. I don't mess with that anymore either. So they use web design software, such as Dreamweaver. It is the new one the one that's currently so popular. It's created by Adobe, and it will cost you about $600. Depends on how much you want to pay, whether that's worth it. Dreamweaver is creme de la creme, wonderful web design software, but it's very complicated and it's very expensive. What a lot of people don't realize is you can find a middle ground. You can use Word to create web pages. Many people don't realize is you type out a document, you create your pretty little document in Word like you normally do. Well, instead of hitting save, if you hit save, it'll save the file as a document, just like always. Most people don't see there is a save, I think it's save as a web page or save for web. If you click on that, Word will actually turn the document that you just created into a web page, and then you can then upload that web page onto a web server, and you have a web page. So if you own Word and you need a simple website, you can do everything you need in Word, save that file as a web page, and then upload it, and then you're done. So you don't have to pay $600. The same is true with Google Docs. If you use Google Docs, there's an option to save as HTML or save as a web page. So you can create a document in Google Docs, you can save it as a web page, and then you can upload it to your hosting server, and now you have a web page. So the big thing to remember with web design is it's all the code that's created is human readable, which means if you want to use a text editor like Notepad and you want to write out all the code, you can do that and you can create a perfectly fine web page. If you want to spend a whole lot of money and get very fancy, you can spend $600 on Adobe Dreamweaver and you can build a very, very fancy web page. If, on the other hand, you need a very simple web page, you can use Word, you can use Google Docs, you can use OpenOffice documents or Writer. You can use any normal word processing software now and also create a web page. So we're going to have more classes on all of this. If you don't know how you want to design your web page yet, I would tell you not to go out and buy Dreamweaver, because you may find that there are other options that are either free or a lot less expensive than $600 that will create a web page for you that you like. So that was a class. We've talked about the basics, that the internet is not the same as the World Wide Web. We've talked about the World Wide Web Consortium and how they try to come up with standards, and that the creators of web browsers routinely ignore those standards. We talked about the protocols that are used to send data around on the internet. We've talked about Hypertransfer Text Protocol. This is the protocol used so that you can see web pages. We've talked about FTP, File Transfer Protocol. This is the protocol that is used to transfer files either up or down. And we've talked about SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. This is the protocol that is used to send emails. We've talked about DNS. DNS is Domain Name Services. This is what turns domain names, CNN.com or BestBuy.com, into IP addresses, 208.64.77.9, that computers understand. Computers don't understand CNN.com. They don't get it. What the computer does is the computer takes CNN.com, it goes to a domain name server, it says, what do I do with this? The domain name server then gives the computer an IP address. The computer then uses that IP address to go to the server where the website is hosted. Once it goes to where the website is hosted, there's a configuration file on that web server, and the web server will say, oh, you're looking for CNN.com, here's CNN's webpage. If you went to the same server and you were looking for weather.com, it would send you to a different web page. We talked about the different types of web servers. IIS, Internet Information Server, which is created by Microsoft, and Apache, which is created by Apache. They're both free. Apache is truly free. You can use it on any operating system. IIS is free, but you can only use it on Windows operating systems. So Server 2008, Server 2003, Vista, XP, etc. There are versions of IIS for Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows XP. What you should remember, though, is that they're limited to how many simultaneous connections are going to your website. So you can only have, I think it's 10 people on your website at any one time. When you decide to host your website, you can decide to either own and control your own server. So that means the computer that houses your website is sitting in your building, you own it. Or you can use a shared hosting plan. So with shared hosting, you pay $3 or $4 a month, and then your website goes just into one of the servers on the internet at GoDaddy.com or oneandone.com, and they deal with almost everything. If you decide to go with shared hosting, or even if you decide to use your own server, you'll have the option between Windows or Linux hosting. Remember, Windows does not care about capitalization within the names of documents. So, like I say, uppercase h, lowercase e, l, l, o is the same as lowercase h, e, l, 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 o is the same as lowercase h, e, uppercase l, l, lowercase e, o. Those are all the same as far as Windows is concerned. Linux sees them entirely differently. So if you have all uppercase hello and all lowercase hello, Linux sees those as two different documents. Again, Linux is generally considered a better platform to host your website on, but if you're sloppy about how you program, this is you have to think about this yourself. If you're sloppy with how you code things, Windows may be better for you because it's not going to cause you as many problems. We talked about HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. This is the language that all web pages are written in. This is a human-readable language, so you can open up a web page in a text document, like with Notepad, and you can actually read everything that's in that document. And if you understand what's going on, then you can understand it, and you can change things within the HTML document with something as simple as Notepad. We talked about scripting languages. Scripting languages are what give a website its flash and pizzazz and bang. If you create a website only in HTML, it is static. You know, the website you go to today is the same website you go to tomorrow. Everybody goes to the exact same website. It says the exact same thing. Scripting languages is what allows a website to be dynamic. It allows you to do things like log into it. It allows, you know, specials of the day to pop up or whatnot. The scripting language is what allows the web page to actually do things. So it's not the same time and time again. The scripting languages normally connect to a database. We talked about the databases. Databases only just store data. It's just raw data. Doesn't look flashy. It doesn't look cool. Like I say, it looks like a little DOS prompt if you ever took a look at one. But the scripting languages are able to put data into databases and pull data out of databases. So the databases do things like hold inventory information or contact information or login information or anything that you need that's just raw, brute information will go into the database. Again, you have heard of MySQL and Oracle and Microsoft SQL Server. If you don't know the difference between these different types of servers, then just go with MySQL. MySQL is free, it's robust. I mean, a lot of major companies use MySQL, so it's a fine, great database. Frankly, even if you did try to go out and buy something like Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server, I'm not sure you would find web software to work with it. So just go with the database stores data, go with the MySQL, it's what everybody has. We've talked about the web browsers. Again, the web browsers made by the different companies, Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, Apple Safari, they're all supposed to go by the W3C standards, and more or less they kind of sort of do. The very important thing, the main thing you have to just remember is that when you go to start designing your websites, you need to open up your website with every web browser that you want your users to use to get into it. So if you want your users to use Internet Explorer and Firefox and Chrome, then you need to open up your web page with those three different browsers and make sure it looks how you want it to look. It may end up looking very, very different. This is something, some of the web designers get a little lazy. They create the web page, they open it up in Internet Explorer, or they only open it up in Firefox, they upload it to their website, and then their visitors start going to the page, and then whatever their visitors are using, it just looks like a bunch of crap. So make sure when you design your web page, you open up with multiple browsers to make sure it works, even works right. Sometimes it won't work right at all. We've talked about web design. You can use everything from Notepad, that you get for absolute free with Windows, all the way up to Dreamweaver to create your web page. It's up to you. There's free and there's $600. There's also the in-between. Any document software, like say Word, WordPerfect, Google Docs, they now can save their documents as web pages. So if all you need is a pretty simple web page, instead of spending $600 and taking 100 hours to learn Dreamweaver, you can actually create your entire web page using Microsoft Word, just to save it as a web page, upload it to your web server, and you're done. That's really about it. Everything we've talked today, if you feel like you're a little bit over your head, every single thing we've talked about today is a class unto itself. This is introduction. This is just giving you the heads up on what's coming. HTML is 1 or 2 classes. Scripting languages is 1 to 20 classes. The servers, their classes, even DNS and TCP/IP and all of that, they will be classes unto themselves. This is just an introduction, an overview, so you kind of understand what's going on. And if you want to start learning about all this stuff before we get around to making the class, this gives you an idea of where to go. So hope you've kept up with me today. Hope you understand this stuff. As always, I'm Eli, the computer guy. This was Introduction to Website Administration, and I look forward to seeing you at the next class.